chapter 3 and verse 27. In Lamentation chapter 3 and verse 27, it says, "It is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth." Short statement, but a powerful statement, and that's going to be the basis of our study here this evening. It's a lesson actually designed for younger people, because the verse is exhorting and talking about how it's good for younger people to learn to bear the yoke in their youth. But all the lessons that we're going to talk about that young people need to learn, and will do well if you learn these lessons when you're young, they're lessons all of us got to do anyway. And so we hope that our study will be profitable as we talk about bear the yoke in his youth. So when we talk about this phrase, bear the yoke in his youth, let's talk about some definitions. The idea of bear. What does it mean to bear? To bear means to accept, to carry, to shoulder, to sustain, or to support. That is, there are some things while we're young that we learn to shoulder responsibility, or to carry, or to accept responsibilities in our life. When we talk about the idea of yoke, it suggests the idea of responsibility, a load, or a burden, or obligation. Now, we've got a picture of a literal yoke where you put animals together. It might be a couple of donkeys, it could be a couple of oxen, it could be a couple of mules, and you work these animals, and generally the way farmers do it is like they'll put an older one that's well trained, and then they'll put a younger one with the older one and work them together, because the older one generally will be strong, knows what to do, and the young one might be a little anxious, but the yoke holds them together, and so it sort of gets him under control, and he sort of learns from the older one how to work. When the master gives the little yank, well, where to go, and the master pulls the rein, where to stop, or to go to the left or to the right, etc. And so they learn that training when they're young. And the point that Jeremiah is bringing up here, that it's good that we learn to bear the yoke in our youth, that it's easier to learn some things while we're younger. And it's sort of like learning language. You find kids that grow up in a bilingual family, they'll learn both languages very easy. Or you have kids where they go to a school where there's other language that is spoken, and other kids are bilingual. It won't be long they'll picking up that second language, because it's much easier. It's much more difficult learning a language when you get older as opposed when you're younger. It's like the proverbial saying we have, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Well, that's generally, it's much more difficult. It's easier to learn while we're young. And that's what is stated in this passage, that there are some lessons, it's just easier if we get them when we're young, because they're going to be lessons that we're going to need all our life. It is good that a man learn to bear the yoke in his youth. All right, let's look at the first one, a lesson, that is to learn to respect authority, that is to be in subjection. That's something all of us have to learn. We have to learn it as children. That's where we begin learning subjection. Ephesians chapter 6, verses 1, 2, and 3. "Children, obey your parents in the Lord, for this is right. Honor your father and mother, which is the first commandment with promise, that it may be well with you, and that you may live long upon the earth." Children are to obey parents. And when they learn to obey parents, they're going to go to school. And they're going to need to obey teachers. And then they're going to get into society. And you got to learn to follow rules. And then someday they're going to get old enough, and maybe they're going to get a job. And you're going to have to mind the boss and listen to what the boss tells you to do at work. And then we get out in society, or that we learn to learn to drive. Well, there are rules that we follow in driving automobiles. And ultimately, of course, as we stand before God, when we come to moral accountability, we learn to be in subjection. That is, we learn to follow rules. In the book of 1 Corinthians chapter 11, verse 3, Paul says, "But I would have you know that the head of every man is Christ, and the head of woman is the man, and the head of Christ is God." Sometimes I'll ask young people, and I say, "Can God do anything that He wants?" What would you say? Would you say yeah, or would you say no? Can God do anything that He wants? Okay, can He do anything that He wants? Yes or no? You can shake yes, or you can shake your head no. What do you think? Yes or no? Yes or no? How about Scarlett? Asher, help me out here. Can God do anything that he wants? Okay, Asher says yes. Actually, that's not so. Because, can God lie? No, it's impossible for God to lie. Anything that's good, anything that's right, I mean, God can do whatever he wants, but there are certain things even God's not going to do because it's not right. That God is, of course, that he lives according to his character and his nature. That righteousness and justice are the habitation of God's throne. And so God lives according to his nature, and he just doesn't do anything that he wants. And so God follows the rules of what's right and just and fair and honorable. And so we might as well learn to follow rules. We're going to have rules that we have to follow all our life. You know, there's rules in society. There's rules of nature. There's the laws of physics. And physics doesn't care who you are or how smart you are or how good looking you are or how much money your parents have. The laws of physics, like centrifugal force, when you're in a car and you're going around a curve, your tires hold to the road. You get going too fast, and friction's no longer going to hold you, and you're going to go sliding off because you went too fast around the curve. That's the laws of physics. It's just that's the way it is, and it doesn't care how smart you are, how tough you think you are. You cannot violate the laws of physics. And that's the way it is about a lot of things, that we just might as well make up our mind to follow the rules. And it will be better off if we learn to mind mom and daddy. When I was young, my mom said, you're supposed to mind your mom and dad. You're supposed to mind your mom and dad. And I remember as a kid, I thought, well, why should I mind my mom and dad? I didn't try to challenge that because I knew I'd get a whooping and get in trouble. But then I began studying the Bible, and I read Ephesians chapter 6 because it's right. God says that it's right. And I thought, I didn't know that growing up. I wish I'd known that growing up because I didn't read the Bible growing up. But then I learned afterward, well, that's why you're supposed to mind your mom and dad, because God says to do it. We all have to follow rules. And we'd be better to learn that while we're young, when we're in the home, and then when we go to school, and when we go to work, and et cetera, et cetera. Learn to be in subjection. We've got to follow rules. Another important lesson for young people to learn, and again, it's a lesson for all of us, and that is to learn self-control, to learn self-restraint. In the book of Acts, chapter 24 and verse 25, Paul reasoning here with Felix, it says, and as he reasoned about righteousness, self-control, and judgment to come, Felix trembled and answered, go away for this time. When I have a convenient time, I will call for you. Paul reasoned about self-control, self-restraint, auto-discipline. Auto means self-discipline. That is, we must learn to control ourselves, that we can't always get our way. It's not always me first. There are other people. There are others that we live in the home, we live in society, and we have to learn to control ourselves, that we have to have self-discipline. In the book of Proverbs, there are several little proverbs here that talks about this whole concept. In Proverbs chapter 29, verse 15, it says, the rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself brings his mother to shame. That is, when a kid doesn't learn to listen to mom and dad and just runs hog wild, doing whatever that he wants, and just like a little tornado, and just does and as he pleases, it's going to bring his mother to shame. No, the rod and reproof give wisdom. You learn self-discipline, parents that have care and love for their children. Proverbs chapter 17, verse 21, he that begats a fool does it to his sorrow, and a father of a fool has no joy. Sometimes we have kids in society that is just completely out of control. Juvenile delinquents. That is, they are out of control, just doing whatever they want to. Maybe because they don't have parents that are there to try to bring control and self-discipline in their lives. Look at verse 25, same chapter. Proverbs chapter 17. A foolish son is a grief to his father and bitterness to her that bore him. A kid that's out of control. We need to be in control. We need to follow the rules. There are certain things that are just not right. That we're to be respectful for others. That we take turns. That we learn to say please and thank you and okay, you first, and have those attitudes. We need to learn self-control. Too many children don't learn self-control. And they are way out of control. And they're just heading for trouble throughout their lives. It's better to learn that while we're young. Something else that is good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth, something else to learn, that is the value of work and labor. In the book of Genesis, chapter 3 there, in verses 18, 19, when God is giving all the curses that are going to fall because Adam and Eve fell into sin, about childbearing is going to be greatly multiplied, the pain of childbearing. And then he goes in verse 18, 19, thorns also and thistles shall bring forth to you, and you shall eat the plants of the field. And in the sweat of your face you shall eat bread, till you return out of the ground, for out of it you were taken. For dust you are, and to dust you shall return. Now, sometimes people look at the curse that fell upon man about the sweat of your face, you're going to earn your bread. And the assumption is that God cursed man with work. That's not true. The curse was it would be more difficult. And you're going to sweat, and it's going to be the thorns and thistles, and there are going to be more aggravations in tilling the land, etc. The work itself is good. How do we know that? Back up to chapter 2, and this is before sin. And the Lord God took the man and put him in the Garden of Eden to work it and to keep it. So before sin, we have Adam working in the garden. It is a good lesson to learn the value of work, the blessing of work, and to learn the work ethic. It's important to learn to work. It's a good thing to work. The proverbial saying, an idle mind is the devil's workshop. That's true. And children need to learn to work. At a very young age, they can learn to work and to help around the house. It appears to me that if a little toddler has the capability of taking toys out of the toy box and playing with them, it would appear to me that the same toddler could pick up the toys and put them back in the toy box. Could they not? I mean, if they're capable of getting them out, don't you think they're capable of putting them back in? Yeah. No, they are. You can enforce that capability and show them with the rod of correction or some other some form of punishment. If we got these toys out, we can put the toys back in. And so kids can learn. I mean, kids can learn to help around the house, fold clothes, get clothes, help with brothers and sisters, getting diapers, getting the bottle, help doing things, picking up stuff, picking up trash, washing dishes. Look at these hands. They were washing dishes when they were 5 years old. That was 61 years ago. These hands were washing dishes, and you know what? It didn't destroy those hands. They're still functional. After 65 years, they still function. Yeah, they were washing dishes. I stood on a chair washing dishes at the sink when I was a kid. Going out, clipping, trimming around with hand clippers. Not a weeder, but with hand clippers. And then mowing the yard. I mean, you learn all kinds of things. Wow, you learn the value of work. It's important. It's a blessing. Paul says in Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 28, let him that stole steal no more, but rather let him work with his hands the things which is good, that he may give to him that hath need. And so we learn to work, and it's a blessing. And there's value in that. You find self-worth. You appreciate what you have. Instead of just being handed to you, you learn to work and to respect others and other people's things because you worked and you know how hard it is to work, to get things and to have. In 2 Thessalonians chapter 3 and verse 10, for even when we were with you, this we command you, that if any would not work, didn't say if any could not work, but if any would not work, neither should he eat. There's a solution to laziness. Okay, if you don't want to help, if you don't want to help around the house, that's okay. Now, when it's time for supper, don't come to the table and eat, because you're not going to be allowed. You think that would change a kid's attitude? I don't want to pick up my toy. I don't want to straighten up my room. I don't want to help fold clothes. I don't want to wash dishes. Okay, you don't have to. But don't ask for anything to eat. Don't come to the table to eat. What would happen? Well, I think it changed the kid's mind. It changed a lot of adults' minds too, of those that refuse to work. And that's what he's talking about, those who refuse to work. Not talking about people that are incapacitated. Well, I have no problem helping somebody that's incapacitated. But who would not work? That is, chooses not to work, well, neither should he eat. So we need to learn to work and to labor. It's good. We're going to have to do it all our life. And there's another lesson that's good to learn in our youth, and that is godly living, serving God. Ecclesiastes chapter 12, verse 1, remember now thy Creator in the days of thy youth. Good time to learn it while we're young, before we're set into bad patterns. A lot easier, a lot better to learn it while we're young, to reverence and to respect God. 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 15, Paul tells Timothy, and that from a child. Literally, it's the same word that's translated babe, the babe wrapped in swaddling clothes. And that from a child, from a babe, from a very young age, you have known the Holy Scriptures, which are able to make thee wise unto salvation through faith which is in Christ Jesus. From a very young age, little kids can begin learning about God. You know, God made the sun, God made the plants, God is so big, God's so mighty, God gave us His Word. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. I mean, there's just so many things little children can learn about the Scriptures, memory verses, Jesus wept. There's just all kinds of things little children can learn, even from a very young age. And it's easier to learn while we're young and get these principles instilled into our heart. And that's what happened with Timothy. There in 1 Timothy, or 2 Timothy chapter 1 and verse 5. When I call to remembrance the unfeigned faith that is in you, which dwelt first in your grandmother Lois and in your mother Eunice, I'm persuaded that it is in you also. Where did Timothy get it? Got it from his mom, from his grandmother. He learned about the Scriptures. He learned about respecting God, reverencing God, standing in awe of God. And kids need to learn that there are some things that are important, that we believe in God, and that we're to respect God. I remember when our boys were little, we'd be driving in the car. Maybe we get singing some song, Happy Birthday, or some other song, and just sing it crazy, and we'd laugh and have fun. And then maybe they would take a Bible song and start singing that kind of funny. And it's like, whoa, wait a minute. That's a Bible song. That's sacred. We don't sing that way. Let's pick another song to have fun about. Yeah, because we need to learn to respect and to reverence, and that there are some things that we are to reverence when it comes to God and the things of God and serving God. And think about that. And that, we need to come to church, and we need to study the Bible, and we need to read the Bible, and we need to be thinking about spiritual things and try to find lessons about what we see in nature, and to look as we go, just as Deuteronomy chapter 6, when you're in the way, and when you're at home, and when you get up, and when you go to bed, and when you're traveling, etc., that we're always trying to teach and impart and share this knowledge with our kids, and learning to be respectful of God. Because we're going to need that all our lives. Because ultimately, we want to be servants of God. Because someday we're going to die and face the Almighty in the day of judgment. So it's good that we learn this while we're young. Something else that's good to learn while we're young and bearing the yoke, and that is to learn suffering. 2 Timothy 3 and verse 12. Yea, and all that live godly in Christ Jesus shall suffer persecution. Yeah, that happens. Romans chapter 8 and verse 18. For I reckon that the sufferings, plural, of this present time are not worthy to be compared with the glory that shall be revealed in us. For the earnest expectation of the creature waits for the manifestation of the sons of God. For the creature was made subject to vanity, not willingly, but by reason of him who was subject to the same in hope. Because the creature itself also shall be delivered from the bondage of the corruption into the glorious liberty of the children of God. For we know that the whole creation groans and travails in pain together unto now. And not only they, but ourselves also, who have the first fruits of the Spirit, even we ourselves groan within ourselves, waiting for the adoption, that is, the redemption of our body. We live in a world where there is suffering. Kids like to have fun. Nothing wrong with having fun. Nothing wrong with having good times. Playing baseball, playing sports, playing video games, having fun, playing hide and seek, enjoying life. Nothing wrong with enjoying life and the good things in life and eating ice cream cone and, eating watermelon in the summertime, spitting seeds. I mean, there's lots of very pleasurable, enjoyable things to do with kids. But kids need to know, there's some bad things, some suffering that's in the world. And that not everything is fun and games. That there are people that suffer and that hurt. And sometimes people get sick and they go to the hospital. And sometimes people wind up in a nursing home where they become incapacitated. And there's a thing called funeral homes, and sometimes people die and life can be hard. And sometimes people have surgeries and they don't feel well. And to be respectful and mindful of that, and to be thoughtful of others and the suffering that happens in the world, and to try to think about that aspect of living also. I remember a fellow that he didn't like to go around funeral homes, and he didn't like to go to hospitals, because when he was a kid, his parents and grandparents just shielded him from all these bad things. Didn't want him to be around all those bad things. And he became an adult, and he was like dysfunctional around those types of things. But that's the reality of life. People become old, and they become very infirm, and people get sick, and people sometimes die. I was a kid when my aunt died, my mom's younger sister, and I remember going to the funeral home, and nothing was really explained, but I had like nightmares about that. But when our kids came along, it's like, well, we want to explain those types of things because that's part of living. That, sometimes people die. Sometimes people really get sick in the hospital, and sometimes people really get infirm, and people get old and decrepit, and there are things they can't do. And we need to be mindful of that. That sometimes we're going to suffer living here on planet Earth. Something else that young people need to learn, and again, all these things all of us need to learn, but it's better that we learn it while we're young, and that is to watch our attitude, to watch our mouth. In the book of Luke chapter 9, in verse 51 and following, it says, And it came to pass, when the time was come that he should be received up, he steadfastly set his face to go to Jerusalem. And he sent messengers before his face, and they went and entered into a village of the Samaritans to make ready for him. And they did not receive him, because his face was as though he would go to Jerusalem. So they didn't like this Jesus going on, kind of passing through there, because he's heading for Jerusalem. And when the disciples, James and John, saw this, they said, Lord, will you that we command fire to come down from heaven and consume them, even as Elijah did? I mean, they're all bent out of shape. And they're ready to call down fire and just destroy these people. But he turned and rebuked them and said, now some translations don't use this phrase, but my translation does, you know not what manner of spirit you are. That is, you got a bad attitude. Their attitude was wrong. You got a wrong spirit about this. Yeah, maybe they didn't understand. Maybe they had a bad attitude, but does that give you the right then to want to call down fire and destroy them? No. You got to watch your spirit. You got to watch your mouth. And parents need to be mindful of their children, of attitude and what is said. Oh, we would keep an eye on our kids about things like that, because it's like, maybe they said the right thing, but the right attitude wasn't there. And so, not only saying the right thing, but saying the right attitude. Say that. Thank you. No, Didn't show any kind of gratitude. Didn't show any kind of happiness. Oh, thank you. No, watch attitude and watch your mouth. And sometimes, kids get a smart mouth. Kids get an attitude. And sometimes parents need to check in on that attitude and have an attitude adjustment. In the book of Matthew, chapter 12, in verse 33 beginning, Jesus says, either make the tree good and the fruit good, or else make the tree corrupt and the fruit corrupt, for the tree is known by its fruit. O generation of vipers, how can you, being evil, speak good things? For out of the abundance of the heart the mouth speaks. A good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth good things, and the evil man out of the evil treasure brings forth evil things. But I say unto you that every idle word that a man shall speak, they shall give an account thereof in the day of judgment. For by your words you shall be justified, and by your words you shall be condemned. You see, what we say emanates from the heart. It reflects our attitude, our disposition, our spirit. And we need to watch our attitudes. We need to watch our mouth. Sometimes we can be a little bit smart-alecky, kind of a little bit cocky, kind of a little bit high-minded in our words, in our attitude. And we need to watch that and to watch that attitude. And it can happen with adults. Sometimes we can get all kind of puffed up about ourselves, get carried away with ourselves, and get a little bit high-minded, and words come out, and sarcasm, and et cetera, et cetera. Well, yeah, we better be watching our attitude and to keep check on that, because bad attitude, bad mouth, we can get ourselves in big trouble. Having a smart mouth and saying things that just not good. Yeah, we learn to control our mouth and our attitude. Yeah, it's good for a man to bear the yoke in his youth. Let's look at one more lesson that's important. That is to learn to live within your means. That's a good thing. Just learn with what you have. In the book of Ephesians chapter 4 and verse 28, let him that stole steal no more, and for something that you want, but rather let him work with his hands the thing which is good. Then you can have to get what you want. Instead of taking it from somebody, you work for it, and then you can have it. But you need to learn to live within your means. Proverbs chapter 22 and verse 7. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is servant or a slave to the lender. It's kind of easy to get a credit card, which is just borrowing money from somebody else. It's easy. I mean, they send these things out in the mail all the time, and just about anybody can just fill them out, and hey, you get a credit card. And boy, isn't that neat? Wow, you just go to Walmart, you pull out that piece of plastic, and just bing, and just, you used to swipe it. Now you can tap them. Some of them you can tap, or you insert them, and it records, and it's like, and it spits out a receipt, and it just feels like you just paid for that. You didn't pay for nothing. There's a bank that paid for that. Now you owe the bank that money. I remember when Kath and I first got married. We got some money for wedding gifts and all that, and we bought some furniture, and we was just starting out, and we bought some furniture, new couch and chairs, and they had some. We went to a furniture store, and they had like coffee table and end table, and like 90 days same as cash. Well, all right, yeah. And so we bought that. 90 days same as cash. We didn't put the cash down, but it was 90 days same as cash. And we had got a credit card, and we went to Kmart, and we bought, that's back when they had Kmart. It would be Walmart now, or it's another place. And it's like, we bought some household items, and it's like, wow, boy, we're really setting up shop here, and we're really starting out, and this is great. Until then the bills come in, and you have to make these monthly payments. And it's like, okay, well, you got to pay this, and you got to pay these utilities, and you got to pay this bill, and the 90 days same as cash, so you got to pay a first payment. And it's like, whoa, it's like all my money was gone. It's like I don't have money to do things because I'm making all these payments. I'm like a slave to all these banks and furniture stores and all these other things. It's easy to do. I mean, just whip off, the credit card, just put it on credit. It just feels like you're paying for it, but you're not paying for it. And you learn to say, well, wait a minute, can I afford that? That's living within your means. And I tried to impress that upon our kids, that you need to live within your means. Okay, so like they would get birthday money, they would have Christmas money, or they have jobs that they work. And so start school, okay, you get a pair of tennis shoes, and we just get a pair of tennis shoes at Walmart, Kmart, because they function, But then they wanted name brand tennis shoes. It's got to have the swoosh on it, or it's got to be, it says Reebok or something. Well, okay, no problem, but you're going to pay the extra for these special shoes. Or they're going to buy a video game, or they're going to buy this toy. Okay, no problem, it's your money. But remember, you got to pay taxes. So that, here's the toy, it's $50. They got $50, but you're going to have to pay some taxes. So then they come and say, I need tax money. I'd say, well, just get something cheaper. Well, you can't help. I said, well, you got to learn to live within your means. Then they go ask their mom. but I was trying to impress upon, live within your means. I mean, if you want to buy a new car, that's fine. If you can afford it, get you a new car. I like the smell of a new car. But if you can't afford to make the payments, if you're not going to pay it off and you're going to make payments, can you afford it? Can you live within your means? It might be better just to buy a car that's a couple years old, or 5 years old, or 6 years old. To learn to live within your means. Do you want to be a slave? It says the rich rules over the poor, and the borrower. Whether you borrow money to get a car, you borrow money to get a boat, you borrow money to get a new shotgun or new rifle, whatever it might be, to go on vacation. You borrow all this money to do all these things. But somewhere you got to pay it back. And so you become a slave, a servant to the lender. And you finally learn, if you can learn that when you're young, is just live within your means. It's like my sister was talking about several years back. She was talking to an old fellow up in the country. And he said, when I was young, there were a lot of things that I wanted, but I couldn't afford them. And he said, now I can afford them, but I don't want them. Learn to live within your means. If you want a new car, get your new car. If you can afford it. If it's within your means. If it's not within your means, don't be reaching out, because you're going to put yourself into bondage. Learn to live within your means. That's an important lesson, to live as we go through life. All these lessons are important, and it's easier to learn them when we're young. Learn them when we're young and put them into practice and ingrain ourselves in these biblical concepts that we see here, because we're going to need them the rest of our life. All the things that we do in life, these are principles that all of us live by. And like I said, this is a lesson kind of directed toward the younger people, but really they're lessons for all of us, that we learn these biblical concepts, that things will go well for us in life. Learning to respect authority, be in subjection. Learning self-control and self-restraint. Yeah, learning the value of work and labor, the work ethic. Yeah, learning to live godly and respecting God and serving God. And learn suffering, because it's a part of life. And learning to watch your attitude and live within your means. We need to learn all these lessons. They are important lessons. We extend the invitation of the Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. The plan of salvation is clearly revealed in the Scriptures. What is it? That we hear the good news that Jesus died on the cross. Through His grace and mercy, if we come to be a believer, be willing to submit in repentance, confessing, being baptized for forgiveness, we can become a Christian even this day, submitting our lives to the will of God to find forgiveness and mercy. Come up and walk in newness of life, and just incorporating all these lessons that we talked about tonight and all the other things. We're trying to be just a follower of God, because God commands us for our good. And then if we do err, come back through repentance and prayer. We're going to sing this song in encouragement. If there's one here that needs to obey the gospel, we can help in any way. Come and let us know while together and as we stand.